Okay, so I have this nice little leaf shape I created there. Because I like that shape, instead of always having to make it new out of an ellipse, I can just duplicate it with Command J and then move it with the Move tool to new places and stretch it and scale it. And warp it and change it. To get the different qualities I need. And it's amazing how versatile the shapes can be when you can fully utilize these tools. I just love that warp tool. And then if I hit Command C and then Command V, whoops, just select it first. So let's duplicate it. If I hit Command J again, it will duplicate. And then I can do something else with that same shape. I can rotate it. I can flip it on its axis. But you'll find in one composition, often one type of shape can be used over and over again. Because that's just how we work as individual artists. We have certain tendencies to form. If you get that annoying sound while you're trying to warp something, it just means you didn't click exactly on an anchor point. And to me, it reminds me of like training a dolphin or something. Makes you better. Because it annoys you every time you click somewhere wrong. So for all of these, I'm basically taking the same complex shape that I'm making, and I'm using it over and over again, and just warping it each time, rotating it, fitting it in. And I like this complex shape because now it has soft edges and hard edges, or rather sharp corners and soft corners. Works pretty well. And notice the tool I'm on now is not the shape tool because I'm just duplicating my previous shapes. I'm just using the move tool to move them around. And then if you need to nudge your shapes into place, the move tool is not precise enough, especially when you're zoomed out like this. You can use your arrow keys to make very small movements. And if even that's not enough, you zoom in and you use your arrow keys to get something. Gesturing. So a lot of duplicating. The difference here, our last project had a total of 6 layers, a background blank layer, and then 5 reference images layered on top of each other. This is going to have probably 50 layers, 50 to 100 layers when you're done, because each time you make a new shape, it automatically makes a new layer for you. But because vector shapes take up so little memory, even though you have 50 layers in a high-res format, it's still going to work very efficiently. Just the space bar. Yep. Spacebar is a shortcut for the hand tool. Command plus, shortcut for zoom in. Command minus, shortcut for zoom out. Command 0, shortcut to fit everything on the screen. Also, because the vector tools are so memory efficient, I can be really wasteful with them. I can leave a lot just cropped off. That's not a big deal, because it's not memorizing every pixel, it's just memorizing the path, the vector path, which only requires memorizing like a couple anchors. But we'll learn a lot more about that with Illustrator. This foot is a tricky shape. But I've got all the components I need. It's amazing how crazy your wireframes can get to get you what you want. And this shape just started as an oval. It has now been warped so many times, it's becoming more like a custom shape. So that's what I've got so far. I'll go ahead and put in a big triangle just to show you that polygon tool with 3 sides. Then you use transform to angle it, but you can also use distort to stretch that triangle into the exact shape you're looking for. And of course you can warp it and let it curve and expand, change. So because James Jean's image here is very organic, there's not a lot of hard-edged, or there's not a lot of geometric shapes. They're all very organic. So almost everything should be warped at some point. You have to save it to the desktop as your Photoshop. Make sure your name's in it. I called mine Carl Exercise 2. And then we'll continue working on it beginning of next class, and then upload it like we did with our cartoon jumbles. Okay, so the big thing I'm missing is this pinkish background. So that will be my last step today, my last step in this demo today, before I get into refinements next class. Though my intention is to keep this one pretty simple. I would keep that in the folder with this. because you'll upload your reference and your finished project next class. We're going to work on it, just little details. We won't have a question of the day next class, so about the first half hour we'll be tweaking it, and I'll show you how to fill with gradients, if that's helpful. All right, so this is what I have when I turn off my reference behind. If I turn off my reference on top, I've got a lot of white in the background. White that I don't want. But the shape's pretty cool. So I need to do what I call the kill whitey phase, and I need a shape that just fills in all of that extra space. So I don't want to do that on top of all of my existing shapes. Instead, I want to do it at the very bottom. So to do that, I click on my original reference image at the base, and then just do one big rectangle shape. Right there. And then for the color selection, I have to find what I think is kind of the average color. And I can always tweak it later. A little bit more red. So the options I have now, if I turn off the top layer and my reference image, it shows only the shapes I've created. And then I can crop down to the actual image borders. I don't think this is quite finished yet. So with the next demo, I'll show you some ways we can refine it a little bit more. There we go. Cool. But I'll hint at one of those ways now. Obviously, this background does not have the same complexity, right? These little red shapes that are stronger here, I need to kind of pay attention to. But one way I can kind of imitate them is to give a gradation to the background. So when I click to fill it, all I can do is select a single color. And by the way, if you change your mind, it will show you the last one you chose. So you can always go back. But just like we did with our cartoon jumbles, I can double click the layer, not the icon of the layer, and I can get layer styles. And that way, I can put a gradient overlay of whatever kind of complexity I think is needed into the background. Whether it's linear or reflected or diamond-shaped or radial. I think I like the reflected. And then I can play with the opacity of that, the intensity of it. Well, that helps a little bit. And it's still a vector. It's just a vector that's filled with a gradation, which is something pretty amazing and incredibly kind of complicated to think about how that works mathematically in encoding. But it allows for vectors to look almost more like watercolors sometimes, to have soft edges, at least internally, within Photoshop. And then I have very, very subtle color changes. You can't even see it on the projector, but between my blues, and that might be an asset I can build on later. But not only can I just color a background by filling in all the white, I can also take any one of my shapes here, and now that I have my top one turned off, I can just use my Move tool and use the option to auto-select by layer. And then all I have to do is click on the shape, and it will automatically select that layer. So if I wanted to add a gradation, I can do that.